On. Now, it is my pleasure to call on stage our next speaker. He has studied and worked in Asia for over 18 years, previously focused on real estate. He is a senior management experience in leasing and investment with multinationals covering industrial, commercial, and retail real estate. Since 2015, he has been the vice president of AtmosAir Asia, where he leads sales and operations. And not just that, AtmosAir, as I've mentioned, is the reason why we are breathing securely right now. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Sam Michael of AtmosAir ProMedUSA, Vice President of AtmosAir Asia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're feeling all right. My name is Sam Michael. I'm with AtmosAir. I cover Asia for AtmosAir. I'm going to talk about air quality today, and then I will tie that into how that is connected with sustainability and energy savings. So our systems purify the air. That is very closely connected with building energy use. So I just want to clarify that for everyone. I want to especially thank DB International for setting up this event. This is a very large event, and it's been great so far. You know, the last time I was presenting in front of this many people, everybody was tiny faces on a screen, and I was wearing this shirt and this tie and no pants. So I'm just getting used to presenting with pants on. Please bear with me. I'm going to start with a short video, 2-minute video. This gives you an overview of what our systems are doing, and then I'll go into the presentation. Go ahead. Oh. Whoops. Oh, there we go.
It's different up here. Nature's air, clean and pure. We know it from the way it makes us feel, more alive. But in the places where most of us live, the air we breathe in is far from pristine. It's stale from recirculation and polluted by invisible contaminants, often posing a silent threat to our health and well-being. The fact is, indoor air quality is ranked as one of the top 5 health threats, contributing to higher rates of asthma, heart disease, cancer risk, and mortality. And that was before a global respiratory pandemic called into question our every breath, forcing us to see more clearly than ever. Clean air is essential to providing safe environments to live, work, and play. At AtmosAir, it's been our mission for more than a decade to help people see air differently and improve human health and wellness by restoring indoor air to its pure natural state. Its active ionization and monitoring technology has been proven to be among the most effective solutions for comprehensive indoor air purification. It works around the clock to keep spaces safe and sanitized, continuously disinfecting surfaces and indoor air. AtmosAir doesn't wait for pollutants to find their way into a filter. Instead, incoming air passes over tubes to charge ions that seek out and neutralize contaminants at their source. In fact, in a recent prominent study, AtmosAir was found to neutralize coronavirus by 99.92%. It's the reason AtmosAir has been adopted by some of the world's most trusted companies.
One thing I've always been concerned about in these hermetically sealed glass towers without operable windows is air quality.
We are one of the first in New York to use AtmosAir Bipolar Ionization as an air purification technology. We started rolling that out in our buildings in 2012.
We were looking for not just affordability, but a complete solution.
We needed a product where we could install it and forget it. And we needed to be able to say, what's going to keep our athletes safe, but not keep us busy trying to do so.
AtmosAir cleans and scrubs the outside air coming back in. It recycles the air. It's energy efficient. One thing that we found out that we were overlooking, and I think does get overlooked, is indoor air quality.
With the pandemic, we all are masked. We're practicing social distancing. This is just yet another layer that offers protection to everyone.
The long-term effects of this are going to be great, whether it's cold reduction, flu reduction.
It takes care of our athletes, which takes care of our employees, which takes care of our fans.
Now, in a pandemic and hopefully soon post-pandemic world, I think that the average consumer will focus a lot more on indoor environmental quality.
We're raising the standard for office space operation in Manhattan because we want tenants to come to our building and say, this is a better place than the alternatives.
What AtmosAir offers is a well-timed solution that adds value to any type of space as people return to public life and we build back better. We call it the AtmosAir Advantage. It offers a distinct safety advantage, so people have a critical layer of defense from airborne pathogens. It offers an energy advantage by providing guaranteed savings through reduced HVAC and ongoing energy costs.
When we first installed the AtmosAir system, we did it on an air handler that we could reduce the amount of outside air. And after we tested the system on it, we realized there was just going to be a huge savings in electricity. In an arena this size, you would tend to get a lot of odors and different things like that. And in the time that I've been here and we've used AtmosAir, those have really been reduced, and everybody who comes into the building will be able to, experience that.
It offers a natural advantage through technology that produces no harmful ozone or toxic byproducts. Most importantly, AtmosAir's continuous monitoring and disinfection offers a health advantage best understood by how it makes you feel. It's time for all of us to see air differently and put well-being at the heart of our buildings so everyone can perform at their peak. Take a deep breath and welcome to the great indoors.
All right, so I'll give you a quick overview of what I want to cover today. I'll introduce AtmosAir, talk about some of the benefits, the technology. We have a great case study with the Empire State Building in New York. There was a speaker from there on the video you just saw. I'm going to talk a little bit about ASHRAE and what their stance is on bipolar ionization, a bit about building certifications, how we relate to COVID and controlling infection, and then the future of air purification and energy savings. And then I'll end with a few case studies. So first of all, I want to talk about what I call the 40-40-40 rule. Although the speaker from Dun & Bush this morning talked about HVAC in buildings actually using 67% of a building's energy systems. So it varies. And this also has a lot to do with climate. Maybe in New York, because it's relatively cool and there's many months when you can bring in a lot more outside air, the HVAC load is lower. But in markets like Manila, there's a lot of energy use from your HVAC system, so such that it's up to 67% of the building's energy use. But if we look at it 40-40-40, okay, 40% of carbon emissions are from buildings, 40% of the building emissions are from the HVAC system, and 40% of HVAC energy use is from treating outside air. I want to emphasize this. I call it outside air. I don't call it fresh air. Because in most major cities, it's not fresh. It's not fresh air. Outside air is not fresh air. It's outside air. Think about it. Next time you're sitting in traffic in Manila, and hopefully you have the recirculation mode on, because that's the way to keep your car air pretty safe. And think about that the buildings next to you in the city are running outside air, and they're calling it fresh air. So you're keeping the air that you're breathing out of the car, and those buildings are bringing it in is a means of air purification. That doesn't make a lot of sense, particularly in markets where the air is really dirty. So whether it's 40 or 67%, it's 6.5 or greater % of global carbon emissions is associated with treating the air that buildings are deliberately bringing in as a means of trying to clean the air. We are an alternative way to clean the air. So a little bit about what ionization is, what AtmosAir is. If you're in the mountains, a very elevated environment, after it rains, the ion concentrations are relatively high. I'm talking about oxygen ions. So you have oxygen ion levels above 1,000 ions per cubic centimeter. As you go to where there's more and more people and more contaminants, those ion concentrations come down. And ultimately, when you're indoors, it's a very low concentration of ions, typically less than 100 ions per cubic centimeter. Ions per cubic centimeter, that's how we measure them. So the goal of our systems is to integrate with the HVAC and elevate those ion levels. That's how we function. Here you can see an ion. We have O2 in the air. It passes past our systems. We either remove an electron or add an electron, and that creates either a positive or negative oxygen ion. That's the way the systems are functioning and generating ions in the occupied space. When we talk about air quality, we're focused on 3 major contaminants. Microbial, obviously, huge interest in microbial, virus, bacteria, mold with the pandemic. People started to care about air quality. Particles are a massive problem. I think you could easily argue, very easily argue, that last year, the year before, and the year before that, way more people in the world died prematurely from particle pollution than they did from COVID. Particles are very harmful to us, and they're prevalent everywhere. And then we talk about VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and odors. Those are the gases that build up indoors, and those can be very problematic. All those things, if you address them, there's opportunity for energy savings. So how do we impact the virus or viruses? We impact all viruses. The oxygen ions are pushed out into the space, and when they interact with a virus, they form a hydroxyl on the surface. That hydroxyl wants to become a water, so it will pull hydrogen from these protein spikes and render the virus unable to reproduce. So that's the function of oxygen ions on microorganisms such as virus, and it's a similar process when we're talking about molds and bacteria, although those are much larger. Particles are a big problem. The way we function on particles is we cause the particles to stick to one another. They stick to one another, and we call it agglomerate. They get larger and heavier, and they fall out of the air. They also, because they're larger and heavier, and they have a charge, they're more easily captured at the returns with the filter. With the Philippines today, outdoors, I've been very impressed with the air quality. Today you have relatively clean air compared to a lot of cities, and that might have to do with wind. It might have to do with different factors that impact the air. Last time I was in the Philippines, I went diving in Coron, in Palawan. Beautiful place to go diving. When I go to small islands, I really hope I'm going to have clean air. I did not have clean air in Palawan, and I take this everywhere I go. I measure the particles everywhere I go. I'm measuring the particles right now, and for me, going diving in Palawan, I got there, and you have all these small motorcycles, and you have barbecuing everywhere, and the particle levels are very high. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go out on the boat. I'll breathe clean air. I get on the boat. The engine is terrible. Lots of particles very high. They stop the boat so we can go diving, and they start barbecuing. And so the particles are very high. The only clean air I got in Palawan was when I was underwater breathing from my tank. So particles can be, whether it's large scale pollution or small scale pollution, it can be very localized, and it can be at the city level. And it's something to be very cognizant of. Indoor air is 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air. This is quite common, although it depends on the market you're in. Most people are spending 90% of their time indoors. 50% of illnesses are caused by poor indoor air quality, and 30% of all commercial buildings have a condition known as sick building syndrome. So indoor air is really important, and the future of our HVAC systems will be to provide us not only with cool air, but also with clean air. The way we impact volatile organic compounds, you can visualize it here. An oxygen ion interacting with a formaldehyde, it would interact with it because they have differing charges, and then it would split it up into carbon dioxide and water. So we're breaking down these VOCs into CO2 and H2O, which are very stable. And we're talking about very minuscule levels of H2O and CO2. So this won't increase CO2 levels or humidity, but that's the process. We're breaking down the VOCs. a very key function of ionization versus other systems is that we're active in the space. If you can imagine UV lights or filters. So let's just say, for example, that the air conditioning system here had a very efficient filter and UV light. That wouldn't be effective because people are close to people. You're close to lots of people. We are all very far away from the air conditioning returns. A virus, if I were sick, for example, would need to go up into that return, go past the UV and filters, come out those supplies, and then the air that the people around me were breathing would have to come from there and not from me, who's much closer to them. It's counterintuitive to social distancing to say that, oh, I put a filter up there, it's gonna help me reduce the virus in the space and reduce infection risk. There is very clear evidence that that has no effect. Passive means have no effect. What we're doing with ionization is we're installing our systems on the supply side. So we push ions into the space. Ions go into the occupied space. So you can measure an elevated ion level, and as soon as someone coughs, sneezes, exhales, that virus comes into the space, it's immediately being acted on by the oxygen ions. That is a key thing anytime you're evaluating any technology. Think about it. HEPA filters, they'll capture the virus. UV, if you need a lot of UV, it could kill the virus. But the problem is by the time the virus gets in there, it's too late. By the time the virus has gone to my AHU, it's too late. You need to treat it where people are infecting one another, and that's in the space where the people are. This is our system. So it's simple and easy to install, very easy to install on a retrofit basis. Very low energy use, so typically 55 to 60 watts. This is about 750 millimeters by 230 millimeters, not a large system. A key thing that people worry about is pressure drop in their air conditioning systems. This will cause no measurable pressure drop in your air conditioning system. We're not a filter, we're an ionizer, so our goal is to push the ions into the occupied space. This is an example of some installations. Here we're in the AHU. We're on the supply side. We don't want to be on the return side. We want to be on the supply because our goal is that we're pushing the oxygen ions into the space. Here we're in the duct, so the tubes are sitting in the duct in the mechanical room. And then here we're in a fan coil. And here's another fan coil installation. This is very important, and I really want to stress this because I know that in the Philippines there's a large presence of ionizers that are needlepoint type. There are needlepoint. You talk about ionization. So the term ionization, there's a lot of different ionizers. Ionization just means something has a different charge. So needlepoint has gone to market claiming they can do a lot of things, but the issue is that measuring, there's no standards for how you test. So everybody can just make up a test that makes them look good. So lab tests, there's no standards. That's why the CDC has pushed for real world testing. If you want to show performance, real world testing. Both of these products, this needlepoint, which I bought for $10 in China, and our system, very different. If you looked at them, you would never suspect that these two things, these do the same thing, but they're claiming to do the same thing. We verify our performance with real world testing. That's very important, not just lab tests. This is an example of the distance that ions travel. With our systems, the ions can easily go well beyond, we can go dozens of meters, hundreds of meters. Ions from needlepoint devices don't go beyond a meter. And the reason is because they're not actually ionizing oxygen. So I want to stress that. I know it can often be poor form to speak badly about the competition and at a venue like this, but it's very important to understand these differences. If you Google ionization, there's major lawsuits against the needlepoint manufacturers for the way they've misled people with lab tests. And I want to stress that these are very different technologies and we are not a needlepoint device. This is the head of sustainability from Empire State Realty Trust. I won't play her video because you've already seen her in the last video, but they are one of the first buildings to get WELL and to get a lot of these certifications. Empire State Building has a unique problem because it's an old building, and so it has to compete with newer buildings, and they've really leveraged indoor air quality as a key source of competing for tenants, and they've done very well with that. So being a very green building with very clean air, AtmosAir has been a big part of their strategy in driving their lease rate.
We are one.
This is an example of their case study. So Empire State Realty Trust, they installed us 6-7 years ago. The reason they installed us is because they're old buildings that could not bring in enough outside air. So they couldn't meet the local codes for outside air. But they used what's called the indoor air quality procedure, and I'll go into that. But basically, if you use an alternative means of cleaning the air, you can bring in less outside air. So it's an old building built 90 years ago, and they were able to say, hey, we're not bringing in as much outside air. If they needed to upgrade the system, it'd be incredibly expensive and disruptive to their tenants. They installed our systems, they ran the calculations, and they showed that, hey, we meet the codes with this, and they saved a ton of money on the initial, and then they save a ton of money on the operational. Now, with COVID, they made clean air a key part of their messaging to drive their occupancy, to drive their renewals. Clean air is a big part of the messaging with Empire State Realty Trust. So we've been installed in all their new spaces. They're for energy and for clean air. This is the CEO of Empire State Realty Trust. This is a couple short clips of him speaking. He, during the pandemic, and now you'll see a video that's also post-pandemic, was talking about clean air a lot. He's not talking about clean air because he's an investor in us or we're giving him money. He's talking about AtmosAir and clean air because it helps him sell his buildings. He has pressure to compete with new buildings in New York, and he doesn't want to just compete on price. He wants to compete on quality. And people care about air quality now, and so he's talking about air quality. I'll play his video.
I'll tie that into the second point, which is indoor environmental quality. This has been a major focus of us throughout our renovation of all of our buildings in the past decade. The fact that indoor environmental health is absolutely critical. So we have put in such things in all of our new spaces, including the observatory, as MERV 13 filters, AtmosAir, which kills off viruses, including coronaviruses. MERV 13 filters capture viruses. And the third most important thing, ventilation.
Great to see you again. Welcome. Nice podium.
Nice to see you. Well, you know, we're glad that our friends at Citi were able to make this possible to happen today.
I appreciate it. So the main thing I've been curious to ask you about is how you're still at 90% occupancy in the building. So walk us through the details of that, if you could.
So actually, it's across our portfolio, and the real difference is outperformance in 2022. We increased our leased percentage by 260 basis points and our occupancy percentage by 210 basis points. And that's a combination of the right buildings in the right locations. We're leaders in energy efficiency. We're leaders in sustainability, healthy buildings, indoor environmental quality. Our locations are excellent. Our leverage is low. And we offer well-modernized buildings with amenities and at a price point that tenants really want. And that's been a terrific result for us for 22, and we're off to a nice start in 23.
So he's been a big advocate of our systems. When he talks about air quality, he talks about three things: filtering, AtmosAir, and outside air. He doesn't mention how much outside air. So they are running their buildings at a reduced amount of outside air, but they've made monitoring and cleaning their air a key part of their messaging and a key part of their leasing strategy. So when we talk about ASHRAE and the strategy and the codes, there's two codes for designing the outside air in a building. One is the ventilation rate procedure. Ventilation rate procedure is very simple, and a lot of engineers just go with that because it's easy. In a commercial building, it's 30 cubic meters per hour per person. Easy. You can calculate your heat loads, you can do everything, 30 cubic meters per hour per person. The alternative, which is equally valid, but not a lot of people use, is the indoor air quality procedure. And this says if you're cleaning the air, you can run the calculations. We have a third-party engineer that runs the calculations, and that will allow you to reduce outside air with the cleaning device. And remember, bringing in outside air is one of the biggest consumers of your building's energy use, or of any vehicle's energy use. So it's a very key thing to be able to reduce outside air and clean the air. This is an outline of what you would need to do. Typically, the process involves identifying the contaminants of concern, setting target concentrations for those contaminants of concern, design the level for acceptability, which ASHRAE dictates. It's quite a complicated calculation, which is why it's not commonly used, but it's equally accepted by ASHRAE. Buildings can do this. You can run your building tomorrow at a reduced level of outside air with very clean air, as accepted by ASHRAE. This is an example of using the ventilation brake procedure, just an estimate, a calculator going from 25 CFM down to 8 CFM, looking at the occupancy, looking at how that translates in a relatively warm market like this. There's a lot of savings on the cooling savings outweigh the heating savings dramatically. But this is kind of a sample calculation of the very substantial savings that you can get from reducing your building's outside air. In terms of certifications, those were spoken about previously. The three major certifications we all can contribute to. Those three major certifications are LEED, WELL, and FitWell. There are all many points that indoor air quality contributes to, so these have gained a lot of attention globally now. For LEED, we can contribute to contaminant-based design, indoor air quality evaluation. We have monitoring as well, and demonstrating indoor air quality performance with monitoring and with testing. If we're talking about WELL, there's preconditions for meeting clean air goals, there are enhanced air quality conditions, and then indoor air quality monitoring. All those are things that we can help you with. And then FitWell is relatively new. FitWell is getting a lot of attention because it's easier to get certified because you submit everything online, you submit images, so it's a lot less manpower. It's not less strict in terms of what you need to do, but it is less time consuming from the certifying body side. So this has gained a lot of attraction with a lot of major developers in the US. They talk about indoor air quality procedures, indoor air quality testing, and indoor air quality testing results as being key parts of the FitWell program. With COVID, the gut reaction for a lot of building managers and from a lot of government authorities was to specify very energy intensive actions. And so the measures that buildings took during COVID were very counterproductive with regards to reducing carbon emissions from buildings and from cities. They included adding UV lights, which use a lot of energy and are very energy intensive. If you actually wanted UV that would kill the virus in the duct, you need at least between 5 and 10 meters of UV lights. You can't just install a couple lights on the coil. It will not kill it. There's not sufficient time for the UV to impact the virus. So you need a lot of UV lights in the duct purification. A lot of buildings recommended, government authorities also recommended enhanced filtration, HEPA filters, MERV 14s, MERV 17s. Enhanced filtration consumes a lot of energy. The pressure drop that creates, the resistance that creates is very, very expensive. So these are measures that consume a lot of energy. And then a lot of the recommendations were to just blast outside air, just crank lots of outside air into a building. And all that can hope to do is to dilute the virus. And you can imagine, even if we're running full outside air in a space like this, it's a lot of people close to one another. So I think the value is questionable, but it is unquestionably extremely energy intensive to bring in lots of outside air into a building. So ASHRAE and the relevant bodies per their last meeting, now everybody's shifting their attention back to energy savings and saving energy and not just saying, okay, we're gonna blast lots of outside air, put really high efficiency filters. This is a clear direction. And then the third thing that a lot of buildings did was they installed lots of HEPA filters, lots of portable purifiers. And portable purifiers in a large scale setting is kind of ridiculous because first, the virus, again, same thing as if it's a filter there, it needs to travel to the purifier and get filtered. Secondly, they use a lot of energy and only cover small areas. And then, a filter like this, a standalone purifier, is only generating 100 to 200 CMH. Whereas the large AHUs could be 20, 30, 40, 50,000 CMH. So you just put a medium efficiency filter in front of those AHUs and you can get filtration performance that vastly outperforms having a bunch of HEPA filters spread around office space. The other thing I experienced with standalone systems is that people have to interact with them, and invariably they turn them off or set them on the lowest setting or don't change the filters. They're also very energy intensive. I mentioned the CDC. This here is a statement from the US CDC following 3 years of the pandemic. They say there is no definitive evidence to date that viable virus has been transmitted through an HVAC system to result in disease transmission to people in other spaces served by the same system. They haven't found any evidence of a virus going into the return, going through all the ducts, and then coming out and infecting people. Yet everybody's putting in UV and high efficiency filters. That doesn't make sense. The virus doesn't transmit that way. The virus transmits person to person. So statements like this are very supportive of the type of purification we do, which is proactive in the space. A bit more on air purifiers. You know, in my experience, people always put air purifiers against the wall. That limits effectiveness. You get better ion distribution from a ceiling. If we look at energy, enough air purifiers that would cover the same area as our systems would consume over 1,000 watts versus our system, which is consuming 55 watts. And often if you see an air purifier, you know that maybe there's an issue with the air quality and it's a concern. So all that's very important to be aware of. UV, like I mentioned, it takes a lot of energy in order to install enough that would actually kill the virus in the very short amount of time the virus has in the duct. We consume much less energy. This is a recent test from ASHRAE and University of Fresno State University in California. What they did is they tested on a recirculating basis needlepoint dielectric barrier discharge. Our systems, the technology is called dielectric barrier discharge, and UV lights in tandem with MERV 13 filters. And their conclusion was MERV 13 with the dielectric barrier discharge had 98.8% reduction of the particulate matter, nearly performed the same as the HEPA. UV and needlepoint didn't do anything. This is very appealing to them. The reason they want to do this test is because California has very strong new residents net zero energy goals. So they recognize that one of the biggest users of energy is outside air, and that they want to show that you can clean the air and bring in less outside air. So their thesis as part of that test was to prove that BPI technology can be effective at filtering and purifying the return air to a point where outside air can be reduced or eliminated. That's really important. And this stresses that ASHRAE is going in this direction. I know a lot of people post-pandemic are thinking outside air, just blast the outside air, blast the outside air. A pandemic, got to worry about virus, right? Outside air is the way cavemen clean their air, right? We have newer, better ways to clean the air. We're not saying no outside air, but 30 cubic meters per hour per person. Remember that the current levels of outside air, that standard was designed when people were smoking indoors, right? People don't smoke indoors. I don't know about the Philippines, but in other markets I've been in, people aren't smoking indoors. And so you don't need that same level of outside air from a contaminant basis. That's very important to remember. Just to further emphasize that the ASHRAE is making a lot of traction. We are members, our CTO is members of several committees, is a member of several committees where BPI, bipolar ionization, has been added. So this is a list, committees looking at, it used to be primarily sorbent technologies, now they're looking at bipolar ionization, electronic treatment. Committees that are looking surface treatment technologies, they're also looking at bipolar ionization. We weren't previously considered for filtration and ventilation, now they've added bipolar ionization. Developing chamber tests, so they are working to develop lab tests and chamber tests for this type of purification, which acknowledges, one, that they don't have it, so lab tests aren't particularly valuable, and two, that they're working on developing it. They're also developing a standard post-pandemic to recommend to the White House, and we are the only ionization member of that committee. Bipolar ionization is an accepted method for 62.1, and then there's a committee looking at gas phase removal. So bipolar ionization, this technology is rapidly becoming more commonly accepted. This is an example of one of our largest case studies. This is the Staples Center. It's now called Crypto.com Arena. I don't know how long it'll be called Crypto.com Arena because I don't know how long crypto is going to last. But Staples Center, they installed our systems and they measured the They measured the air quality. He mentioned in the video, they installed in a cigar lounge and they measured the air quality and they reduced outside air and they measured the air quality. And they didn't talk to us for a year. We thought the deal was done. Like they weren't going to talk to us. They reached out and they said, we're doing the whole arena. So they installed the whole arena. They reduce outside air by 50%, and they save over $200,000 a year in energy bills and also on reduced filter changes. So their filters, a lot of people, they're reluctant to put good filters in the system because of the number of times you need to change the filter. If you reduce outside air, you don't have to change the filter as much. And they also went from MERV 14s to MERV 11s. So they also save money on the filters. Filters are cheaper, they change them less by reducing outside air. So that's been a really great case study for us. There's some of the numbers. US Bank Stadium, this is in Minnesota. This is a market opposite of Manila. Their primary cost is heating. So they have football games all the time and lots of events when they have to heat. They installed our systems. They got green financing. So they got financing based on the energy savings they were going to get. And they save over $200,000 annually. The US Army installed our systems. They measured mold spores. They measured particulates. They measured at several different levels of reduced outside air. And ultimately, they were very satisfied. And per their evaluation, we saved them a lot of energy. Rush University in Chicago, they installed and they did a lot of testing. So before AtmosAir and after AtmosAir, they looked at bacteria levels. It's very hard to measure virus in an air. Virus tends to be measured in lab settings, but you can measure bacteria, and bacteria is a good proxy for the amount of virus that would be present as well. So huge reductions, 100% reduction across the board at Rush University Hospital. Seattle Children's Hospital, there they had a major problem with aspergillus. It killed one child and several were made very sick. They installed our systems and that stopped the aspergillus infection. Briefly, in terms of if you needed a solution, what we need is very simple. This tends to be the data from your mechanical schedule, the AHU, the area it's serving, and the supply air. Those three things, we can design a system. We like to understand the level of outside air in the area and ceiling height that we're serving, the volume of air. But on that basis, we can design a system. Different types of systems. Here's an example of Jinmao Tower in Shanghai, and there were installed at the duct, and the duct serves the whole floor. Here we're installed in the duct, and it's serving a portion of the floor. Here we're installed in all the fan coils. So we've installed not in all the fan coils, about 50% of fan coils. They installed our systems in that office, and here we're in a portion of the fan coils there. So that it's very easy to install on a retrofit basis or on a new build basis. This is an example of our clients. So LaGuardia, LAX, Walter Reed, Marriott, Wells Fargo, Lend-Lease, JLL, some very big names that we work with. In terms of the systems, we have portable systems that we can move into spaces on a temporary basis and primarily when folks aren't there. We have, again, this is more portable systems for different levels of contaminant and different sizes of spaces. And then we also have the in-duct system. So systems that would go in the duct and serve the space. Really, we like to design the system because I'm very particular about how systems are designed. I don't want a client to come tell me, oh, I'd like to buy one of these. I say, I want to understand your problem, and then I'll recommend the unit that will fix that problem in the most economical fashion. So as you know, this is the contact details. We work with Juster here. So get my contact details, his contact details. We hope to speak to you. I have a few more minutes. I want to share a few case studies. I'm looking at my time here. I got 5 more minutes, so I want to go through a couple quick case studies. This is LAX, so Los Angeles Airport. We've been here for several years. They have had major smell issues, and they installed our systems. Smells from the retail, smells from the planes, smells from a nearby wastewater treatment. We were very effective there. They installed it over 200 different AHUs, over 400 systems. We replaced a lot of carbon filters for them. So they had been using carbon filters to clean their air. They replaced them with our systems, and they've been very, very happy. we did one terminal and they expanded to all of them. This speaks about that installation in LA. We've done the immigration area at Changi Airport. Changi Airport installed our systems. They did a ton of testing. This is surface testing before and after on bacteria, where the results are very, very good. So substantial reductions in surface microorganisms at Changi Airport. This is Johns Hopkins. They looked at many different contaminants. They saw big reductions in VOCs, big reductions in particles. And when I look at air quality results, I also look at CO2. Anytime I'm evaluating data, I look at the CO2 levels, because the CO2 levels give me some sense of the occupancy. And you had much higher CO2 levels, but the contaminants were reduced in this case study. So that is saying something. Higher CO2 meaning a lot more people in the space. We've done CBRE's offices in Shanghai. For a lot of folks in China, their big concern is new renovation smells. So you renovate an office and people are worried about the smells and the formaldehyde and the benzene and the toluene and the xylene. We installed, cleaned it up, no smells. We also show them in the data that they have superior air quality. So the future of air quality will involve real-time monitoring. You can place a monitor in your space and you can visualize the air quality. Then you put it on a display so you can talk about the air quality. You can present it on your phone. You can present it on a tablet. You can share that your air is better with your occupants. This is an example of CBRE's office display. You can see the particles versus outside. We're often looking at the indoor particles versus outdoor particles. You can see the TVOC, CO2, temperature, and humidity. This is just a short 30-second video I want to play for you. This is the CEO of Virgin Voyages.
And in addition to the vaccinations, what other safety protocols are you going to put in place?
At Virgin Voyages, we've invested in some new technology. It's called AtmosAir. It's an air purification system, not just a filtration system. So it uses bipolar ionization to proactively go out and kill all of the bacteria and all of the viruses that are in the air. It's the same type of system that is used in hospitals.
So like I mentioned with the Empire State Realty Trust, he's not a shareholder. He doesn't make money if we sell more AtmosAir, but he's going to the market communicating that he's installed our systems because he needs to have an answer when people ask him, you're a cruise ship, cruise ships are a nightmare. For virus, what are you doing about the virus? And so he's out there telling this story. This is another landlord who was also part of the other video, and he shared his story about marketing clean air and seeing clean air as really being the future of office spaces. A large financial system firm, this is Bloomberg, they did their own testing. They were very happy with our performance. They took it to a lab, tested, and very happy with the performance. They went and rolled it out globally. We're in all Bloomberg offices. This was part of a huge test with New Rochelle School District in New York. We've installed throughout that. Real world testing, measurement, verification, then they install. I cannot stress that enough. We're about real world in the space, measurement and verification of our performance. That's what makes us different. Gensler's offices in Shanghai, again, you can see an indoor air quality report. This is the air quality over a week, average indoor versus outdoor, and see our performance there. Hotels, huge reduction in particles. The Conrad, they were very happy with our systems and they wanted to market to their clients that they had our systems. Hilton had huge reductions in mold. So we're very effective on mold, which is a very common problem in hotels. USC, very effective on VOCs in particulate here. PwC was a great case study. They installed us to treat odors, and then they found that people were getting sick less when there was an outbreak of the flu. The floor with our systems, one person got sick. The other floors, over 35 people got sick. On that basis, they installed us throughout their offices in Japan. This is 3 different boutiques, retail, where we reduced VOCs, very effective there in retail spaces. Anyways, that's the end of my time and the end of the case studies. Please feel free to reach out to Juster or find me at the booth at the conclusion of this event. Thank you, everyone.